shortly after his dissertation, embarked on a very exciting diplomatic career, initially with the Italian Foreign Ministry, and after that with a range of different EU institutions. Most recently, he has been in the DG for enlargement in European neighborhood. I'm mindful because they've recently had a rebranding and I'm still stuck with the old name. So he's currently the deputy director for the unit responsible for Albania and North Macedonia, but he has continued to stay very much active and engaged with the policy, with the academic world, and has been teaching in Italy and in the UK. And inspired by interaction with his own students, he has embarked on this wonderful journey and written a book about learning policy advice, on which he shares a number of different insights and kind of gives us a glimpse into what a job of a policy officer is. It is a fantastic book, and after his presentation, I will share some of my thoughts about it and all the things that I've liked about it. But without further ado, I will just give the floor to Giulio. The floor is yours to enlighten us on building bridges between academia and policy.
Thank you so much, Ellie. It's a great pleasure to be here. And it's a great pleasure to be here side by side with you, because I think we had in the past years a few exchanges in my office. And so I think we work together in bridging the gap ourselves with our engagement. And I was always very, very proud of all your very important outputs. So I look forward to the next chats that we'll have to help and support your work with my humble views. It's a pleasure. I was thinking the last time I came here, I was a young student, and I came on a trip. And it's been 30 years. So I'm like, okay. I had this moment, when you get off the train, it's been 30 years. So happy to be here after 30 years, and happy to engage with you guys and share some thoughts. Ellie told me I could speak for 30 minutes, 40 or so. I will do so, but we are in a very relaxed dynamic. So if I say something that teases your attention, you want to interrupt me, feel free. You want to make a comment on the spot, raise your hand, and we can have it more dynamic. But of course, we have due time allocated for questions and engagement later. With Ellie, we agreed that I would, of course, start from the book. So I will tell you first why the book. I will tell you quickly what's in the book. I will obviously explain why I see still the importance of training and doing vocational training on policy advice and policy writing technique, despite the clear change of time, the clear new perspectives that we have with the institutionalized use even in the European Commission of generative AI and chatbots. So why do we still need to learn how to write? And then I will try to translate and make a link with my experience in the European Commission in particular, and working on the EU enlargement, which is a bit of a weird type of external policy of the Union. I will explain how I see it, and I will focus, as agreed with Ellie, on the challenges that have characterized the work and that are characterizing also currently the state of affairs, of our projection, our engagement with the Western Balkans and the other enlargement countries. Up until October, I worked on all neighborhood countries and enlargement. So if you have questions also that transcend the Balkans, feel free to ask. Why the book? That's quickly said. I can share a story to break the ice. It's also in the book. There are a few stories from my career in the book, and obviously from careers of more important people in the book. Why the book? Because in my experience, my policy career started with a cold shower. I was done with my research. I was writing my PhD. I was almost finalizing. I think I was about to submit, and I passed the competition to go to the Foreign Service as an expert on multilateral affairs. I packed all my stuff. I was a Northwestern visiting researcher in Chicago, and I went to the Foreign Ministry. You will not believe, but I wrote my thesis on Bosnia. Most of my literature review was about sovereignty and related issues. And on the first day on the job, I get my first piece of policy task was prepare a briefing for the minister and a speech. He's going to Canada. Canada is a strong advocate of responsibility to protect doctrine. They're organizing a conference on that. You write the speech. He's also going to have 2-3 bilateral meetings. You write the talking points for these bilateral meetings. That's your task. Literature review on sovereignty, new normative understanding of sovereignty, R2P doctrine. This was my life for 5 years. And I got my first task is on that. I was like, it's my manifest destiny to be here on this policy job. I can do it with my left hand. And then, already the design of the template I had in front of my eyes was bridling my head and my thinking and my flow of consciousness. It was not working. There was some difference already in filling blanks than I would do when I was just writing my term paper or my other academic chapters, my conference paper, articles, etc. It was different since the beginning. I delivered by the deadline. I presented what I thought was a nicely drafted speech and stuff. And my head of office, minister plenipotentiary with lots of experience and therefore also a very nice diplomatic attitude, did not trash that in the bin. He put it in his suitcase and said, I will read it again during the weekend because you have so many interesting ideas, but they're too sophisticated. Sit next to me. Let's write the briefing. I said, I gave you a briefing. It's shining. It's too sophisticated. It's not accessible for the minister. That was my cold shower. Now, I was lucky because I was still working on my thesis. So I could not afford to distance myself from my academic past, recent past, it was actually my present, from the ability to be sophisticated to defend your arguments. The intricacy in looking for that necessary degree of sophistication that gives you elations when you get there. Like this is unattackable. Forget all about that. When you're on a policy job, as my minister plenipotentiary of office said, you need to be accessible. And I learned that accessibility, and that's what I speak about in the books amongst various advice and mentoring that I offer, is a bit more complicated than one might think, because you need to be not only accessible in an internal vertical bureaucratic way, your output needs to be approved by layers of bureaucratic review. So that's a vertical line of accessibility. When you calibrate your written output for policy advice purposes for your minister, your ambassador, your head of office, your secretary general, your commissioner, if like me, you work for the commission, then you need to consider this and a vertical dimension of accessibility, meaning you need to empower your manager, your leader, your political leader, to have a bilateral, trilateral, multilateral exchange. So accessibility needs to be calibrated horizontally in terms of relation and impactfulness of your manager vis-a-vis his or her interlocutors. So I started to develop this, and I managed to escape what many colleagues confessed to me. I also did many interviews that I got into this book with colleagues, some very senior. Young students who land on a policy job, when they have the cold shower, like I had it, they tend, and this is confessions I noted down from many colleagues and from my students, because I've been teaching for 16 years now. They tend to have a crisis of rejection for everything that is academic. And the idea of this book came at the vending machine at the university, actually, because I was teaching a course on democracy, a very sophisticated theoretical course. And I had students telling me from their internship, I said, we don't feel prepared for this. All we are learning here is too theoretical. We are not ready. Because we write stuff and they trash it. And I say, oh, I had a cold shower. Don't worry. I was like, I've been there. And then they asked me, can you actually make a lecture about this vertical dimension? I started to mumble some stuff at the vending machine. It became a book. It became a module. I've been teaching, as she said, in Rome, at Westminster, here in London, in Trent also. So it's been a lot of weekend teaching for me in this journey. So the idea of this book simply came with the ambition to help students who want to land on a policy job to land smoothly And through a training journey here, very atypical, I will say something about how the book is structured, front load the cold shower, front load the trauma, to prevent the reflection of saying, no, my academic thinking, my academic mindset is harmful to my day-to-day productivity in the office. Because this is what my senior colleagues told me. There is a very important ex-DG who even endorsed the book, who said to me, I wish I had this book before I started my career 40 years ago, because I remember I was suffering for 3-4 years and I hated all my PhD, all my professors. I had a rejection class. All my colleagues admitting that there is a big problem. You feel the need to distance yourself. And I have to say, in the idea of bridging the gap, scholars have been on the more active side, because I also did a bit of literature review here. You really see, on the scholarly side, there has been an effort. Scholars have been wondering, we should teach better theories that are better applied to practice. We should simplify that. We should open and finance. This I criticize a bit. UN model, all this negotiation stuff. This I criticize. I think you need to front load exposure to office dynamics. If you put people in a negotiating room to do UN model, to shake hands and feel important, as I tell to my students, Guy, you will be minister plenipotentiary in 25 years. You will not shake hands. You will work for that hand to be shaken. And you do by writing, and you do by giving oral input, sometimes on the spot. If you want to join a career in the EU, in the UN, in the diplomatic service, in UN, etc., most of the people that come to interview, they will ask at some point, okay, you are in the elevator with the Secretary General of the organization. You want to work on this topic. How do you explain to him, her, what are the new priorities in 30 seconds? And you start to think, why do you pressure on me like this? This is insane. I've seen people standing up from poly-structured interviews saying, looking at us like, you guys are sick. The truth is, I've been in the elevator. I've been in the car. I've been in the situation. There's a story I say in the book. It was, you hope when the story was about Bosnia, because I said it was war crime negotiations. I had my director general appearing at the meeting, calling me through the glass door. Giulio, I've been told it's a difficult meeting. I have to be here. Who are they? What is our red line? What are our objectives? And by the way, I have a tremendous headache. There is a glass door. They're looking at you. You think, oh, guys, I'll come back in half an hour and go back to PowerPoint. You have 1 minute. And believe it or not, my director general performed incredibly well. It was not only due to my punctual and, as I said, accessible, that's the key word, policy advice. It was also linked to the fact that they are politicians. And you as a policy advisor, that's a little bit of I start to enter the point too, what's in the book. You need to change your mindset when you do policy advice from an internal institutional perspective, because also policy advice, in a section of the book, I explain what's policy advice and what's not, how it differs from advocacy, from lobbying, etc., etc. Policy advice is an art that I think imposes a little bit of recalibration of skills. The junior diplomat has to work a little bit like a movie director and a movie script writer. That's the method I give here in a very simplistic way. Your manager is your arrow. You need to hit certain objectives politically. Yeah? You use your manager, and he's an actor or an actress. Your manager is your face, is the person that is engaging in the world. She's deciding, they are paid for taking political decision, and so on and so forth. But despite being the fifth wheel, that's why my students sometimes at the beginning are telling me, Professor, you spend your day writing. You write briefings, policy notes, you write speeches. Yes, that's what I do. But that's not diplomacy. No, it's actually key. Even if you are at the end of the bureaucratic line, you can even from there inform policy making, but you need to be accessible. You need to respect your the mandate of your institutional architecture and priorities, the political priorities that are given. You cannot arrive and make a revolution. So you are bridled, you are contained, you are constrained, but you have a margin of maneuver, right? You have some revenue which you can move and you can impactfully inform policy making. And I say to my students always, in order to be motivated, think that when you are a good policy advisor, you are like the Steven Spielberg of international affairs. And that's motivating. At least it was motivating for me. In the book, I said at the beginning, it's a bit peculiar because after the introduction, there is a simulation, the cold shower. So even before I explain how you do policy writing, how you move from academic writing to policy writing, how you do speech writing, how you write press release, you have a cold shower. So I try to force the reader to really front load that traumatic experience. Also to test yourself, what can you do in a couple of hours on a complex political situation? How far can you elaborate? And then, of course, after each chapter, then after explanation, there are again simulations which help the reader. There is also material that I asked Routledge to kindly put for free online, and they accept it. Sometimes they are not all evil, these publishers. So you find also online, for those of you, the book is available, I think, in Oxford online system. You told me it's in the library available. I hope you will check. Hopefully, it's available in your system. And there is also on the Routledge website, there is some exercises. So it's a journey, it's a training journey that I designed. Now the question is, as I said, we have chatbots, we have generative AI coming. And at the end of my book, I was writing the conclusion, and I remember something that the most recurrent statement you hear at the vending machine on a Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. when someone is still buying coffee because there is yet another briefing to write unexpectedly with the deadline probably expired already because attribution, sometimes it's slow. You hear, oh, it's been a tough week. I feel like a briefing machine. So this is the feeling of the average young diplomat on a Friday when yet another briefing request has come unexpectedly. So I was asking in the book, are we going for being our self-briefing machines to have machines that deliver briefings? Somehow, yes. I was actually privileged. My previous team, I was leading the rule of law and democracy fundamental rights team in DG then NIR. And we were chosen to test the chatbot that our Joint Research Center and the IT service have prepared for the Commission. Is sealed, secure, institutionalized, all internally fed generative AI system. Okay? And I saw that the machine works and learns. It still hallucinates. All chatbots do. Ours a little bit less because it's, as I said, a little bit confined. And it was an interesting, revealing experience. But I realized, and in particular, I was interviewing my junior colleagues working on it and with it. And those who were really at the very beginning of their policy career, who had still not made the grade intellectually on policy advice and policy writing, they were struggling. They felt to be subdued to the output of the machine. Whereas those colleagues who had a little bit, at least 1 year, 18 months experience, they were mastering it and they were efficient. So my prediction here is we are partially going to have an important alleviation of burden thanks to generative AI, which has been institutionalized in services across the industries, etc., across countries and international organizations like mine. And this is a good thing because a junior diplomat, in average, is a data cruncher, a researcher, an editor, a proofreader, a designing of documents the machine can do. But in order for something to be perfectly calibrated, again, to the institutional vision, the political priorities, the person that is going to use these talking points, you need the human knowledge. So I see an opportunity here. We are going to have a generation of diplomats, junior operator in international affairs, like you, who possibly will have more time to be more strategic. So my hope is that with this, generative AI will somehow help bridging the gap, because there will be less, unless if you do training, etc., there will be less exposure to the trauma, to the idea of relinquish everything that is academic, it's not useful, and this is going to be helpful. So I think AI will help. However, you don't master the skills for policy writing, you will have a little bit of, you will be subdued to the machine. So I think it's important still to train yourself, make the grade intellectually on accessibility, on calibrating messages, on informing policymaking in an effective way, and also turning political priorities into concrete action, without undermining, of course, your institution, its mandate, etc., etc. So there is a moment of opportunity there. I want to see it in a positive way, but only if people responsibly make intellectually the grade. So skills building for me remains key. And that's enough said on the book. Now, I promised you, and I think I need to thank you for your very, very wise advice, to try to make another bridge between my daily work and the experience of learning policy advice. So I will share some reflections on the importance of bridging the gap between academia and policymaking in international and EU external affairs, drawing from my experience in particular at the European Commission. And I try to make some reflection also then on challenges in the policy. The enlargement process in which I work, I like to say, students ask me, but what's the difference between enlargement and CFSP? I mean, it's still external projection. It's all external. Students at the first day in school, they're still confused. I say, guys, you will understand it. But if I have to make a long story short, allow me a religious metaphor. I saw so many churches around here. Enlargement is foreign policy with the Bible, or the Quran, or whatever holy text you believe. I mean, I saw a Catholic church there, so I say the Bible. What do I mean by that? Enlargement is a process which is, it's about, I don't like enlargement, it's very imperialistic, enlarge the empire. So I like Jan Zielonska's book about Europe as empire, but I still think that it's an accession process. If you had asked me how would you call the GX, I would say DG accession, because it's about countries aspiring to accede to the Union. Close parenthesis. Still, long story short, enlargement is foreign policy, is a foreign engagement, but we work against the backdrop of a key. So we do enlargement, we say accession negotiation, but in fact we don't negotiate. Those countries, they need to embark on a journey which will lead them to absorb all the hundreds and thousands of pages of a key. They can ask for derogation, and we are negotiating on that, but de facto, there's no negotiation. We have a Bible, which is a Bible contrary to the Bible written static. It's a Bible that changes every day with new regulation and new directives. So it's a very peculiar policy. And I saw that in 15 years of work, now 16, on enlargement, I saw that possibly the enlargement is the policy where the dichotomy between the political, diplomatic decision-making, the intergovernmental one, and the technical work of the Commission, this dichotomy, sometimes friction, is more evident. And we had two big changes of direction of the political dynamics. One time I will explain in a moment in a sense of an acceleration, now more recent, and previously in the sense of pulling the handbrake. So it's always politics who gives the pace, but at the bottom there is technical work. And being forced to do technical work, I saw the importance in my daily life firsthand of having a healthy approach to a scientific and academic mindset. Again, this doesn't happen in all foreign policy aspects. There is some pure multilateral aspects of diplomacy that they don't need an academic. But I found I've been working having the privilege to work in a very peculiar policy area. I saw the importance of maintaining an healthy mindset, academic mindset, without this rejection crisis. When I saw that in the first part of my career. I joined the Commission in 2010. It was a few years after the accession of Romania and Bulgaria. We had the CVM, the Cooperation Verification Mechanism, on. There was not so much appetite, apart from Croatia, politically on enlargement. Enlargement was not a priority. You may remember Merkel saying Croatia is the last country to join for a long time. She made the prediction, and normally Germany made very good predictions, I seem to remember. So we were working in a phase where politics was pulling the handbrake. There was no appetite. We used those years, after being hit, but okay, you're not a priority policy anymore. We use these years to recalibrate, I like to say this word, refine the enlargement methodology, not make a revolution, refine. We have been accused of enlargement countries to make a revolution, to make the enlargement difficult on purpose. This is not true. We were refining the methodology to make the enlargement more impactful. And creativity was playing a role in this refining. But also, to a sense, again, scientific rigor has been important. Sense. In order to be convincing and impactful vis-a-vis our member states who have the decision making, but also to the parliament and the broader public. So we have refined the methodology by using quantitative and qualitative elements of assessment in a better calibrated way, even in sensitive areas like rule of law, on which I worked. And I could elaborate more on this if you want, but for the sake of time, I will keep it very short. But again, working on aggregation of data, working on statistics, working on collection of raw data, working on monitoring of investigation, indictments, court cases, execution of ruling in a statistically relevant way. So we have done a lot of scientific work. I worked the last 5 years with the text and data mining team, all PhD in economics, mathematics, and statistics from our joint research center. Can you imagine? You do foreign policy, but you need to rely on a statistician to aggregate that, of course. So you see how this was a very important work that we were doing in terms of ameliorating our scientific method. And obviously, we complemented this with qualitative assessment. We strengthened a relation with the Venice Commission, relying on their opinion, with other bodies of the Council of Europe, working again on rule of law, democracy, like CEPEJ, for instance, working on the judiciary. And we started to establish a practice ourselves of case-based peer reviews. We bring magistrate, lawyers, prosecutors, investigator, law enforcement agents from Europe, from member states, very senior, very important anti-mafia prosecutor, to engage with their peers in enlargement countries to discuss the handling of investigation, indictment, and cases. We are talking about closed cases. We don't interfere, obviously, with the judiciary. But we have created a methodology where there is a quantitative data collection, which is serious, is done in a scientific way, and there is a constant investment in qualitative digging in order to inform, then, of course, our own work, our own monitoring, etc., etc. So we have been spending these 10 years in refining the methodology, also in strengthening, in a scientific way, our availability of information. And I can tell you, I've had council discussion where I noticed that against the provision of evidence, member states would change their vision. So we worked in the phase between Croatian accession, I would say Romania and Bulgaria, but then in particular the accession of Croatia up until a couple of years ago, on refining constantly the methodology until February 2020. That's when we published our revised methodology. People say it was triggered by Macron. Macron went out in December 2019 from the council, said France giving a veto on Albania and North Macedonia until the Commission revised the methodology, and they gave some requests. We were already doing that. That's why it took us only a month, and there was Christmas break, by the way, to publish a new communication, because we had already wrapped up. So it was just a lucky coincidence for us. Then the Russian aggression, the unprovoked Russian aggression on Ukraine, 2022, February, temper large-scale invasion. This has triggered a change. The political vortex, the diplomatic establishment, the intergovernmental decision-making has placed enlargement on a priority. They understood that we were losing ground, that we had to give an anchor to people in Europe with the European and even transatlantic aspiration who were under physical threat from the country that in 1995 signed an agreement saying, I am the guarantor of your sovereignty. This is what happened, in a long story short. We can discuss, there are people who make fantasies, but I think in this room we agree that that's a solid fact. So now we have had the politics that from a handbrake, enlargement is a priority. The new commission, every letter to every commissioner, there is only one cross-cutting reference. That every service in the commission, every commissioner must support the enlargement process. Is the only truly cross-cutting across the 27 letters from the commission. Is the only cross-cutting aspect that is always there. So now we have a different issue. So before we can calibrate our efforts, and now you need to deliver. You need to deliver. We need to make things happen. It's a very difficult and different dynamics. So to answer your question, you said, what are the challenges now? Well, politically, we are on an interesting dynamic because, as I said, the council, except from selected vetoes that we are seeing, the council is more or less supportive. Again, there is a veto now in Ukraine, from Hungary, etc. There are other issues, but overall, the council is delivering. So, what are the challenges of policy making in enlargement now? First, a little bit, of course, we are paying the enlargement fatigue. We lost a bit of grip. And here the accusation from many analysts and also some scholars are saying, you should have been faster in the past. It would not have been fair. You tango in two, reforms were not delivered. Those who delivered, like Albania, on justice reform, the vetting, the rest of the rule of law, came in a leap. Yeah, Albania last week opened cluster 3. Now is really the prospect of opening all the cluster, all the chapter negotiation by the end of the year, because they made the reform even when they were not even a candidate. So those who were smart and were delivering and were committed, now they are advancing at a different speed. So I don't think the grip is lost. It's partially lost on some dynamics in some countries, but those countries that believe in it, also because of the popular push, guys, in Albania, last Eurobarometer, 98%, 97% population wants absolutely to join the union. For them, it's an issue of national rehabilitation. They were an Korea of Europe for 60, 70 years. And I'm not offending anybody. I'm quoting actually the Albanian ambassador that I heard it from him, so I feel authorized to use this. I'm not the machine. So a bit of grip lost, yes, that's a challenge. But again, I think it was fair to be fair. The second challenge is the fact that, contrary to the past, in the past decade, and most importantly, in the past 5-6 years, there have been a race of proactive geopolitical projection from non-authoritarian regimes in enlargement countries, even in the Western Balkans. The Saudis, Turkey as well, of course, China, the Russian Federation, goes without saying, they have tried to gain in space. And there is a problem for the European Union. The problem is that we were talking about being transactional. We have an ambition of being more transactional. That's true. But, if the Chinese go and win a bid and they build a bridge and they do infrastructure, they're going to do it in a much less intrusive way than we do. If we finance something, there is conditionality in our cooperation, even due to human rights and rule of law. There is a green agenda to respect. There are workers' rights. There is public procurement, which is rules which are imposed. There is ex post verification, audit, etc. We are not an easy partner. So that's why in this moment of speed and dynamics that are very even fast, those who have the ability to give support governments with fast achievements, they gain ground contrary to us. The problem is that I'm proud of us being a bit of a slow and stubborn partner. You see, Wilson used to say the US is the beacon of democracy worldwide. I love that. But again, that was a last for many years. I think until a few months ago, we all shared the vision of the US as being the beacon of democracy worldwide, promoting democracy. But that was a beautiful, maintained for many decades, self-proclaimed political vision. The European Union has something more. That's our burden. The European Union is not only a politically self-proclaimed beacon of democracy. The European Union, if you read the articles in the Treaty on the European Union, which are related to all the external dimension, enlargement, 249, Article 8, ENP, and Article 21, CFSP, you will see that in every article there is a thin red line that connects this. It's the reference to our values. Actually, Article 8 on the ENP is extremely normative. It says when you engage, when the EU engages in the neighborhood to create good neighbor relations, we must strive to have these relations founded on our values. That's very normative, you know? It's very powerful. So we are not an organization that is politically proclaimed to be the beacon of democracy. We are an organization that by constitution imposes itself in its mandate to be the beacon of not only democracy, rule of law, fundamental rights, and democracy. That's a bigger challenge. So it's still a challenge, but it's a good one. And I think it's something that is worth fighting for. But of course, it doesn't make us a sexy partner, especially beyond the enlargement, where the carrot of accession still functions somehow to deliver successes from country to country. Last point about challenge is obviously about the US support. The US was always supporting openly the enlargement process in the context of links to the transatlantic relations, to the transatlantic and NATO presence of countries, Latin countries. Now I feel it's a little bit less vocal. And this is, I think, is a factor not only linked to the closure of USAID. We were cooperating normally. Projects linked to EU member state building were financed in a way or another also by EasyTap, OPTAT, USAID. There was always a joint healthy coalition in state building with the US, even though this was clearly actions linked to EU member state building. We function like that. Now it's a new era, at least with this administration. So I think these are really the challenges of the current phase, despite, for the technical work we have to do, despite paradoxically is the moment where we have the greatest push. And now I need to conclude. I think it's time for a chat. I would like to have your wise views. Two things to conclude. One, thinking also of the country where I am. I think the UK and the European Union, and the UK for its history, for its values, for its, despite changing government, for its stable, healthy view of the way the world should work in the past few years at least. You don't have to go back to past and try to overcome, but you know, in the democratic, in the era of promoting democracy, etc., we always share this healthy, even generous view of helping the other. I think the UK and EU have a common value that can be an asset in a moment of geopolitical volatility. It's predictability. We have it also because in our treaty we say that we need to do business in this way. We can be more transactional, but we need to do business in this way. The UK still, I feel that again, through administration, when it comes to foreign policy, changing geopolitical dynamics, adaptability, greater adaptability than us in the UK, of course, is a single government. We are a multinational pool sovereignty system, very complicated one, so less adaptable. But still, there is stability. There is stability, there is predictability, and predictability I see as a value and therefore as an asset for third countries who are partner, but also for other international organizations, etc. And also, to conclude, I want to go back to the essence of why do I make a crusade about the importance of helping young people like you to remain academically vivid and healthy. Because guys, even if here we are not in a lab of chemistry, we are not dealing with hard science, we believe, I hope, and looking at you, I think we do, that the strive for the truth, the strive for scientific research, for meaningful, impactful findings is what we like. I hope. You can nod if you to reassure me, because I think it's also it's good. Now I tell you again, Chatham House rule. Actually, this is the point when it was 2.0 Chatham House. I never told this story. I was shocked the other day. Well, I need to share it. I will not mention in which organization, but a colleague came to meet me for lunch looking shocked and traumatized. And she said, I resigned. She works for an international organization where the US is a man. And I said, I cannot work like this anymore. Every document we produce, there is censorship, etc. They are a big investor and we cannot. So we need to abide to what they request. And I was diminishing her comments, saying, like, come on, you don't resign. What they asked? They asked to cancel the word anti-discrimination, to find a way around. She said, no, it was another word. I said, okay, there was something about LGBTIQ+, no. Equality. He said, Giulio, they asked to cancel as a condition to approve the documents and the related funding one much simpler word than all the things we're saying. Try to guess the word.
Exactly.
It starts with S. Science.
Silence.
Science. Scientific method, scientific approach based on science. The United States of America asked, I will not say which organization, I will not say which field. It was not a volatile field. It was a field of operation linked to hard science also. The US mission to this organization asked, upon threatening withdrawal of funding for related action, that the word science and scientific would disappear from the document. So you ask me why on a day of holidays, today in Brussels, because I come all the way to Oxford to present my book and promote a method to have better prepared the policy officer, young diplomats like I had the pleasure to meet earlier, is because I believe that even if we don't operate IR, this is not hard science. We have the privilege of not being hard scientists. It's still the scientific method that matters, guys. So for me, it's important to have new generations like you in whatever side you will work. Because my book is not only aimed at helping future diplomats, I also help scholars to understand the difficulties of dealing with policy advice, so that in your future research, if you stay in academia, you can have a better understanding and even better interaction. I conclude with this very short anecdote. I wrote a book before this one on EMP with a colleague from EUI, from the European University. He's a full-time scholar in, tenure track career. So when we started to do interviews, I said, listen, I'm busy, I cannot join, but you go ahead. And then I had colleagues calling me saying, but can I discuss the interview? Because there were a couple of things this scholar, she was so authoritative, so I didn't challenge. But what did she mean by this? And I was like, no, this was a wrong concept. So I sat with her saying, guys, we need to change the way you communicate. You were too academic. So she's like, yeah, explain something. So I saw that sometimes this never happened between me and Ellie. Ellie explains herself very well. It's not reading smart, it's reading amazing. But I saw that sometimes academic scholars take concepts for granted. There is a concept in the literature X which you take for granted. You are writing our literature review. This was the case in this specific anecdote I mentioned. A couple of colleagues called me saying, yeah, but how could she speak about this concept like this? This concept for us means this. No, that's the academic meaning. It's another thing. So it's very important that we also understand that those who remain in academia need to develop certain aptitude when dealing with policymakers in order to fish out the most important information, like you've always been doing brilliantly. Thank you very much. I hope I gave you some food for thoughts, and hoping that the book is available. You can. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Giulio. That was amazing and very, very interesting and insightful. I just want to briefly say, having had the chance to read the book, there are so many things I like about it, but I'd like to highlight a few aspects. I mean, obviously, this is an innovative approach when it comes to teaching diplomacy and international relations. And I commend you for embarking on this very important journey because it gives a very practical glimpse into the world of policy making, which very few people will have an opportunity to get an insight into unless they have privileged access. So you are democratizing knowledge, which I think is very, very important. And the other thing which I have also particularly like is the variety of different policy exercises that have been integrated into the book, again, moving beyond just mock negotiations. I think the skills that are required and particularly valuable when it comes to drafting, whether it's briefing papers, preparing speeches, important statements, and also at the same time gaining this institutional awareness. I think that this is something we as academics often forget. I think this is another point that I will link later to in terms of how academics navigate the policymaking world when we research the policymaking world. Sometimes we oversimplify things and we lose this nuance in terms of how complex interinstitutional and institutional awareness and dynamics. And so I think that this is very, very helpful to kind of also ground our research and interaction with policymakers. And maybe I will encourage you to consider writing a book for scholars who are embarking on doing interviews. Maybe this could be the next book that you consider, making sure that we do not misunderstand each other. Because I think that one of the, obviously, the bigger messages of this book, in addition to making sure that we are accessible, is to make sure that we are not misunderstood. And it seems that it happens very often because academics write in one particular style. We tend to train our students to think and structure and present information in this particular way. And obviously there has been an important push in terms of how we translate scientific papers and feed them into the policy process. But I think that we need to be mindful of this two-way interactions and exchanges. And I think that this book is, I mean, again, it's not just for teaching. I think that for teaching is a great innovative approach. But in addition to that, I think it helps scholars understand much better the policy making process. And one section that I have particularly liked, because I have a soft spot for reading policy documents, is distilling the meaning of different policy papers. I think that there is also an opportunity for a chatbot or artificial intelligence to also help with the translation in that aspect. But I think it is a very much welcome addition to the existing textbooks, and it will be greatly appreciated by young scholars, by our students, by anyone considering a job in policymaking world, not necessarily just international organizations and diplomacy, because it gives this nuanced understanding. It kind of lifts the lid and guides the reader into the world of policymaking and some of the key guiding rules and approaches. So, yep, I think that it's a very much welcome and innovative edition, and I will look forward to incorporating some of the exercises into my own teaching. So thank you again, and thank you again for joining us today. And now we can open the floor for questions and comments, and we can start there.
Well, thank you so much. It's a very, very fascinating talk. I wanted to ask you about one dimension.
Name, country,
Good.
and background. If you're an economist, jurist, or sorry, I'm a curious Southern Italian. Bear with it until I'm here.
So you said what I was, because I'm from Lithuania originally, but I'm studying here. But I briefly worked in the Council of the EU on the same topic, enlargement. So I wanted to ask you about something that seems to come up very often in academic discussions of this topic, enlargement and rule of law, as you might be very familiar. Is there this sort of protracted or delayed or slow or detailed bureaucratic action Obviously, it's inevitable given what the political direction is, but it seems to have given a lot of unintended negative effects in terms of pockets of authoritarianism in Western Balkans, or we feed the local autocrats with the EU money, that's sort of very, very broadly put, or in terms of protection of rule of law in the EU, or very technical measures. And Hungary was sort of disassembling its judiciary. The EU was pursuing measures against, I think, age discrimination. So there just seems to be this sort of mismatch and potential big negative unintended effect of these policies that seem to be technical, very clear, very simple, and yet have this unintended negative effect. So sort of reflecting on your career, is there any way in which policy advisors or bureaucrats or people who work in policy, not politics, can foresee or at least try to mitigate these consequences that academics are very good at spotting, but perhaps less able to advise and how to correct?
Since it's a very articulated question, I'll answer and then take the others. Look, I think a few things to say, since you touched the point of the money. Already with the last regulation of the NDCI and IPA 3 regulation, you see the learning curve, because you have performance rewards. Those governments who are delivering on rule of law reforms are going to get rewarded, so they get more money than the others. You also have an article related to that, which provides that if there is serious backsliding of human rights and the rule of law, you can stop. And there is a famous case of Republika Srpska, a 300 million allocation, which was blocked. Basis on this. The learning curve, I think, is going up in terms of being at least having the formalities legally well designed in order to be able to trigger drastic decision when it's about giving money. There is also a sub-specification in the article about freezing funds, which says that no funds that affect the civil society can be touched, even if a country goes bananas with their reforms and with the rule of law and democratic trajectory. The problem is that entrenching the rule of law is difficult. We have seen what's happening in the US. When you have a system which is hyper-democratized, also the magistrature, the judiciary is extremely democratic. You have prosecutors run for election, so they're hyper-politicized. You see that in the moment the electorate provides a solution which is borderline, I say it like this, on terms of democratic stability, rule of law, the checks and balances are not there. So this was is teaching us. It's teaching us that rule of law and democracy go hand in hand. They're equally important, but the rule of the law, in terms of fully entrenched rule of law, is a bit more important than democracy. So with democracy, you can elect Hitler. With the fully entrenched rule of law, you have democratic resilience against the Hitler that you elected wrongly. But without rule of law fully entrenched, you don't have democratic resilience. I'm not talking about the US in this case, obviously. We're just going on a dramatic things. So it's very delicate to work on the rule of law. And it's also not a process which can be done very, very, very fast. And I think it was healthy for us, just to keep talking about our learning curve, that we went from a tick-the-box methodology. It's all about a key, apply the key, and we saw the results in some countries you mentioned, to something that is more demanding. I remember discussion with the Albanian establishment of 10 years ago. Why are you asking us to do serious rule of law reforms and justice reform? By the way, in 2016, they changed 2/3 of their constitution to introduce justice reform and the vetting. Very courageous reform. Generalized vetting of all magistrates. 65% expelled for unjustified wealth. They asked us, you know what the answer was from the commission? I wrote these 15 points with my director and my advocate. Tough luck. We have a new approach to the rule of law. We have the fundamentals now. The rule of law is the heart of the fundamentals. So tough luck. But we also say to the Albanian government, then if you will deliver, the moment you open negotiation, we think it will go actually faster than it's happening. But this prediction of 10 years ago, I've seen it with my eyes now. So it's also a little bit, at the end, you do business with governments. You cannot escape that. I read a lot of criticism. The commissioner went there, met the prime minister in a moment of protest. We do business with government. We also meet with civil society. We also sometimes don't publicize what civil society needs to protect the civil society. You're not talking to civil society. Well, we are, but for the sake of, so it's all a very delicate dance, I think. So I wrap up. I think we are on the right learning curve, and we'll see with the next MFF, the new instruments. But I think, of course, there is ground to be more assertive in the sense of suspending funding. We did it. We could do it more. Possibly, we will see. I think we are on the right trajectory.
So thank you, the gentleman here, and then the lady over there. Thank you.
So thank you so much for the talk. My name, Jonathan, I EPS European Politics from the Netherlands. So that's all the questions. So maybe on a more micro level, based on what we're talking about, I think what I really like what you're talking is it is important as academics or aspiring politicians to communicate well, but sometimes you just run into political realities where either people don't necessarily don't understand what you're saying, but there's reasons they just ignore, right? And I think like in the EU context, obviously we're in a much better context compared to the US, but we never really thought the US would be in a place where it is right now. So I wonder if you're like an aspiring policymaker or a diplomat, where you're also, or a scholar even, where you're still reliant on the goodwill of politicians to some extent. What do you do in a scenario where the politicians are either just like don't care what you have to say because you're an academic, no matter how well you explain it, or even if they're willing to listen to you, it doesn't conflict, it doesn't fit with their narrative. And that's not even with extreme Trump context, but even in the case where sometimes the academic sense and the real life, what is best politically, isn't the same. So I wonder, one, do you recognize this image where sometimes it's not about people not understanding you, but it's just people being unwilling to listen to you? And two, in those scenarios, what do you do?
That's a very fascinating question, and I hope I can get, even if you don't publish, I can get the recording, because
Q&A and not recorded.
I record it so I will watch it again, because these questions are amazing. I keep recording.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you for that. I first start with a quote from one of my previous directors, who on a moment of disagreement with a leader, I will not mention, intellectual disagreement, he was a bit angry, and when we were in the elevator, he told me, politicians, they come and go. Civil servants, they stay through their career and serve. So let's hold on and let's go serve. We went to the office, and obviously we didn't write a note to please a political leader. We explained that we had there was particular legal issues that we need to take care of, and the political vision was clashing. We had to find a middle ground and correct the trajectory. We put it black and white. I hope with this anecdote you understand how I operate. I was also very privileged. I had fantastic management. This is the moment where I do my plea for you, for those of you who are European, like you. I'm a European EU member state citizens, of course, also UK. You can apply, try to join the commission. It's a bureaucracy, but it's a fantastic. When I presented the book in Brussels, one of the discussants was an ex-DG INTPA, DG Home, head of cabinet of Mogherini, head of cabinet of Prodi, long commission career. He said, Giulio, I hope this book helps the new generation, because we need people, because here we are very privileged. It's the only administration where I work where people are asked constantly to think. And I thought, yeah, that's true. My brain is squeezed because of the problem we need to solve. again, I do pure policy. There are also jobs where you deal with more technical things, but we are asked to think to serve a mission. I like to say with some colleagues, we even have in the name, we work for the cognition. Mission is part of our name. Huh? And I worked with very, very important and wise manager. I never had a problem with being accessible. I had clashes sometimes, like we presented something. No, I want to do the opposite. Okay, but we talk. This is not a regime. The service serves and informs the commissioner. The commissioner gives political, but I find always in the commission there is a healthy exchange, so that in the policy cycle, in the way we inform and the way we execute because the machine, I think overall, I work also in the administration, I interact with diplomatic service from all over the world, also in new countries, and I see that the way we function is overall somehow positively challenging and always bringing good results. So of course, I'm not saying this just as someone who's on the payroll of the commission. I say this as a civil servant who appreciates the healthy dynamics in the office. So I never had big clashes. When these clashes were there, we did our work, they did theirs, and then you find a common ground.
Yes. Thank you very much. May I know if it's still being recorded or?
Yes, but we will not. The questions will not be the Q&A session. If we haven't decided yet. Giulio will decide if he's happy to publish it online. But the Q&A session will not be published. So the Q&A session will not be published.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Venneri, for sharing your insights, which are really helpful and appreciated. And I really equally appreciate Dr. Gateva's organization of this event, because the intention you just shared with us, I think, really takes into serious consideration not only the policy needs, but our students' learning needs, which is generally appreciated. Yeah, I am a DPIR student in education with my previous academic training in political science and IR. And I'm currently working for the UN. I'm originally from China, but I've spent quite many years across different parts of Europe, thanks to the generous Erasmus Mundus scholarship. So I feel truly grateful to the European Commission, really speaking from the bottom of my heart, not just. So I spent nearly 2 years in Brussels, and there I had the privilege to conduct research interviews with various commission officers, and I found all of you very much approachable, which I truly appreciated. And when I went to Geneva, also sponsored by Erasmus Mundus, I also had the privilege of interviewing European Commission officers in WTO, also super approachable. Yeah. So that I think that's very helpful for researchers, especially back then when I was only junior researcher. Yeah. What I wanted to say was, when I was a student in Europe, the atmosphere back then in EU-China relations was very much different from years later. Back then, the relationship was labeled, that was officially named as comprehensive strategic partnership. So I wrote and published on EU-China relations before. But I stopped paying attention to EU-China relations for quite many years after leaving Europe. And one day, when I just wanted to refresh my knowledge, I was so surprised and disappointed to find the terms had changed to, much better than me, negotiating partner, right? Economic competitor, and systemic rival. The word rival really struck me as a Chinese who holds this EU-China bilateral relationship very close to my heart. And then, of course, starting from then, I noticed so significant changes in EU discourses about China. Yeah, and also not only discourses, but also actions. Yeah, which I fully understand from academic perspective, also from practical perspective as well. But nowadays, with the Trump administration taking office, we can all see immediate shift, very smart, obvious shift in U.S. policy towards China. German leader, French leader, initiated talks with China, and we all know for what reasons. So I wonder from policy perspective, so to what extent this swift adjustment of the U.S. foreign policy towards China has been influenced by policy advice from academics, which is an automatic, very normal, new, natural change in this very smart, wise politician's mind. And also, sorry, I'm so sorry, yeah, and there has always been a difference between Southern Eastern European countries' policy towards China and Western European countries' policy towards China. We call it the divide among European members, and academics like to comment that China takes advantage of this divide among European members. And I also wonder about the differences in the influence on European foreign policy towards China and other countries in the world among the think tanks, the policy influences in Southeastern Europe, Western Europe. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I'm just taking mental note of what you said, which is my thank you. It sounds all very interesting. Again, I'm an expert on Western Balkans neighborhoods. My work experience goes until Armenia, Georgia, but I'm no expert on China. But my very first job 7 years ago was a study on the impact of SARS on strategic relation between China and Italy. I don't have an answer. I really listen to you with interest. I think on the first question you asked, there is the Trump variable and the geopolitical volatility that we are facing for sure has affected the recalibration of interest and engagement of Europe with the other partners. And with China, despite all the issues of the open dossier on dumping, anti-dumping issues we have, and etc., etc. So there is, of course, in the WTO a lot of this hot dossier of potatoes linked to trade and other problems. So clear. I think there has been a recalibration going on. I don't know until how far it will go. You tango in two, so we will have to see. It's also difficult to predict, having seen how China-Russia relations have been developing. So there's also this big question mark, I think, for Europe in terms of trust. And on the second question you're asking, I don't know. I think I'm sure that there is some impactful think tanking and academic research that is going on that. But these are questions more for operator from either DigiTrade in the Commission or the European External Action Service working on China. I can give you some advice on the point. I really am no expert on that. So on your second question, I can only take note with interest because I would like to know myself.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to you very much.
David?
Thank you, Eddie. David Madden, Southeast European Studies at Oxford. You referred to cold shower moments. The moment when you think, oh gosh, am I in the right job? Or, am I approaching this the right way? But actually, I think in the end, these are positive moments because they do force one to think again about how you're approaching something and you can learn from them. So, I mean, yeah, they are cold showers, but they have some of the benefits of a cold shower, I think.
Once again, my cold shower helped me to grow through it. But I also saw that there is, when the cold shower is prolonged and is too brutal and the temperature of the water is really freezing, I unfortunately saw this, that what people sacrifice is their academic mindset. And colleagues confess that. And also, I imagine I still had to have my DPIR. I still had to defend my PhD. when I got the thing crashed, and hell believe this was my PhD, half of my literature review, and the guy's like, this is not accessible. I felt so hurt, saying, why did I waste 5 years to be told by someone who's not an expert? I am an authority on this, not you. Who are you? You were dealing with trade. My head of office was a consul in Los Angeles. He was organizing the arrival of Italian actors at the Oscar. I said, what do you know about R2P doctrine? Sorry, minister. But then you have to accept it. Thank you. You gave me a very good hint. It's true. There are the cold shower. I think it's better to, as she was saying, for skills building, for helping in the education. I think it's better to front load it for a simple fact of awareness. But you are very right that in my second edition of the book, I might quote, we might have a talk, and the other book on interviews, this we have to write in 4 hands, not two. I'm too busy. I cannot do it alone. So if you embark with me, we do. There are many gosh moments, and these are the healthy moments. Even to go back to the question of the gentleman from the Netherlands, even when the moment comes with a political clash. I had a couple of those, as I mentioned. And when you say, how can I be in this situation? But then you make the best out of it. And you see that the institution functions, the structure functions, the mandate, the staff regulation that protects our work is there. Predictability. I go back to that. It's black on white. It's not a tweet. We are living in a phase where the destiny of people, the destiny of relations between nations, which have evolved from here, are decided and changed in the same day between one tweet and another. I don't like that. That's not, I don't think, maybe I have to live with it. When we all have to live with it, I think we have. It's clear cut. But still, I feel that I want to say I don't like it. I think it's important that there is an effort to recuperate a bit of predictability and rein back in also the United States, and in this UK and we have to work a little bit together. I didn't sleep the night I heard the word science. I didn't. The day I was presenting the book in Leuven at the Catholic University of Leuven. I was doing they had organized a nice keynote on an event of Bridging the Gap event. We find out that I stripped my speech. I couldn't talk about anything else. I was like, no, guys, you need to hear this story. Okay, forget about my keynote. Close the door. I mean, I was in shock physically. So I think we need to work hard with the UK on reliability, on predictability, on restabilizing a little bit the dynamics, because things will get out of hand very quickly otherwise. I don't speak about World War III. I don't even want to speak about it. But if I close my eyes and I think about the future, I don't see flowers, so to speak. It's not a good moment. But sorry for the digression. But thank you for what you said. There are many very important, oh gosh, moments which are always healthy. If you work in a context where the institution protects you, you as a junior officer need to ensure. Thank you for noticing that. You need to nurture, to absorb and nurture your institutional perspective. That's what makes a policy advisor different from a lobbyist and a democracy activist. But also that institution protects you. You serve, but you are also served in a sense from the stability of the institution. That's the beauty of it. It doesn't pay well to be a civil servant. You know, if you're in the finance sector, bitcoins, you may make much faster money, but it's much more volatile.
Excellent.
Conscious of time, but
I don't
this
have
is a more, I guess, personal question. When you were in academia still finishing your doctorate, were you already planning for policy, or did you originally plan on staying in academia? The reason I'm asking this is because I feel like there's academics out there who want to work and want their work to be in conversation with policy. There's others that don't, but I guess don't really approach it explicitly. But what was the case for you?
To share my personal experience, I finished my BA. I did a Master of Diplomatic Studies. I was thinking of joining the diplomatic service. And then for a variety of reasons, I also applied to other master, Bruges, etc., and applied for a PhD. Because I always thought that I like somehow. And I started a PhD thinking it's just a parenthesis. I'm a very practical person. I need to solve problems every day. I love writing. You can see it, 2 books in 3 years when you have a big job. I can tell you, either you love writing at night at 5 o'clock in the morning, or you. So I love writing, etc. But I am a man of action. So my vision was I see myself as a policy operator. When I was about to finish my PhD, I was starting to teach. I started to go around conferences. I also had the privilege to be invited to present my empirical finding in rather prestigious, humbly I say that, places. I've been at Harvard, JFK School, I've been in Georgetown, and so LSE. So I saw that my stuff was somehow picking up. A couple of things that I created was like so rewarding. And I was like, I like this. And also the teaching was like, I love teaching. I was reconsidering everything. I swear, it was the only thing I applied to the foreign ministry call is because my scholarship was about to be over. And my teaching was very little. I was a leader. So I said, okay, let's see if this goes. And then worst case scenario. And then I got this job at the foreign ministry. I got my badge. I said the story in the book of the cold shower. And it became intriguing for me, coming from getting the cold shower, coming from academia. And I say, I actually, so long story short, I now think I have the best of the 2 worlds. Because I have a full-fledged policy job, a decent career. I'm not a director. I'm a deputy head of unit. God forbid deputy director. But I'm having a good career. I had a meaningful dossier. I had impactful jobs. I was steering reform which changed a lot of people. I can only be proud of that. But at the same time, I never stopped teaching. So I'm okay with what I can get the best of the 2 worlds. But I have to admit, my ambition was always policy. My PhD is very policy oriented, its conclusion, etc. But then when I started to teach the last year of PhD, apart from the invitation to campuses in the US when I was at Northwestern, etc., which was, it's also good if you see your research is working, you're getting published, you feel motivated. The teaching really, I liked it, and really, I wanted to stay academic. Because also there is don't forget, if you are at crossroads, there is a comfortable dimension. I make fun of my scholars friends saying, if you have headache, you take a pill of Procrastin 200 and it passes. Because you can still do it tomorrow. If this morning it's holidays, my phone rang 3 times from the delegation, from the Director General Office, Giulio. Sorry for bothering you on holidays, but the delegation is not closed, it's not holidays in Skopje, in Tirana, I have problems, they call. So if you have a headache, you cannot take Procrastin, you need to answer the phone and work. I wanted to prepare a better presentation. I already did a miserably fail, I gave you something nice. But I was on the phone. Procrastin is not available in our medical prescription book. So ask yourself what you want. My suggestion is try both worlds. If you have a vocation for research, do the PhD. But also, and I conclude, I speak about this in the book. I think in hard sciences, there is the lab experience. And then people write PhD, and then people write papers. In our realm, sorry if I say that I'm still in your realm, but of course, at a very much lower level, but in IR, diplomatic studies, etc., everything is a little bit more volatile. And there is a tendency of students to just go. I was working before the PhD. I was working in Palestine, Israel, implementing projects. I was with my hands on the ground. That's where I got the vocation for a policy role. But still, it's in our realm, things are a little bit more volatile, and people think, okay, I will just study and do a master, and then another master, and then I write a PhD. They don't do the practical experience. like you do in chemistry, you need to burn yourself in the lab. So I advise you burn yourself in the lab, do an internship, do a visiting. I speak also about this in the book. There are new ways of interaction. Even in the commission, we take. I had just. I don't know if it helps you, but in the commission we can take unpaid interns. We pay all our interns, but there is a program for. It's called Stagiaire Structuré. So people who are in an official study program or vocational training, like if you're doing the entering the magistrate career in Germany, France, they have this training program. So if you're studying and in your administration tells us this person can do a stage, sends us a letter, I can take someone. I had a postdoc guy from Leiden last semester. He came for 5 months. He was working on our on rule of law. He came in the rule of law team. I got this guy. It's unpaid, so your scholarship continues. When he left, he had this drink. He said, "You made my dream come true." I said, "In which sense?" I saw from the inside, and I'm much more aware of where I want to be professional. I said, "Job is done." 5 months, but only 5 months. But so do this kind of things if you are at crossroads. Personal advice. I was swinging from one passion to the other. I'm a Southern Italian, very unstable, schizophrenic. I always knew I was going to end up in policies, but I love academia, I love teaching, I love academic engagement, and I could not live without, even if it cost me a lot of Saturday mornings, early flights, go to Rome, take the train, come to London. So
thank you so much.
Good luck to all of you. That's my message. Do you also have a question? If you have a question,
just one question. So,
how to deny a question? Someone will stay until the end.
Vincent, my background is in history, undergrad, master's, but now I'm in education, so I'm doing a teaching license here. So my question is, as someone outside of policy, how approachable is your book? Because just from this talk alone, I've got a couple big ideas. Okay, rule of law, go back, look that up. Procurement, go back, look that up. Enlargement, go back, look that up. So I've got all these big ideas. Okay, this is all these ideas about policy I've never seen before. Go back, look that up. As a newcomer to policy, as someone without all this background knowledge, if I pick up your book, is my experience going to be very much, another one, go back, look it up? Am I going to be able to make sense of it? Or is it something that I will read through and go, okay, tell me everything that all this means, all right? I have to go see someone who's in the sphere.
I might be biased, so perhaps she answered this question. I just want to say, I wrote this book. Of course, I chose in the various scenarios. I chose the EU scenario, OSCE scenario, UN scenario. Online, you find also mock simulation on the G7 scenario. Put yourself in the shoes of an advisor of a president from an atoll from the Pacific who's invited on a G7 outreach on level of the water rising. And so I really try to give, not to be all about enlargement. There is, I think, one scenario which is Western Balkan, although the country doesn't exist. The country is on fictional. And everything is fictional because, this is very important, when you apply to policy jobs, and you are given tasks, sometimes you get really fictional tasks. So that you every mock simulation I put in this volume can be performed only based on the information that you are getting in these 2-3 pages. That's how you test yourself. You don't have to progress knowledge. Everything is calibrated for you to work with the information you have in 2-3 pages. Because it's about the method and not about the content of the knowledge. This is also what HR people do. They will ask you at the structured interview. There's also a chapter about structured interview, by the way, because I really want this book to help people to learn policy job to have the full picture, also to communicate orally when you sell yourself to the panel. There is a chapter on that. And I think it's important that you approach, if you embark or go online and take the things, really, I don't need to know much more than what's written here. You put yourself to test, there are instructions, how much time, for each there is different time. So it's everything calibrated. It's 15 years of developed training. So I think it's quite stable now in the methodology. So you will not have that, I think, that you think, oh, stop, I need to go and search for this. No, I might be biased, but
I think it is a very practical book. And so there are some examples that are drawn from international diplomacy, but the reference to EU enlargement was an additional extra that I have asked Giulio due on his expertise to add, because I thought that we might have more students or colleagues who are interested in the Western Balkans. So there isn't a particularly heavy enlargement or Western Balkan focus in the book. The book is much more practical. I mean, again, if you're a scholar, a student of politics and international relations, I think it's a relatively smooth journey. You also have a background in social sciences and history, so maybe there is some summary about the policy cycle, agenda setting, but I think it's very accessible, so I don't think that you will have major issues or that you will need to look up many words all the time, because it's more about how to, what is the policy world about, how to prepare, what are some of the key things that you might be expected to do in an international organization where you will have like several layers of management above you. And I mean, again, if you consider also as well, I think that you have highlighted civil society organizations or advocacy work for different NGOs as well, it will be kind of, I think it's a glimpse into the policy world, but a very practical glimpse into the policy world with the background on international organizations and diplomas, but very practical guidance into the policy world. So I don't think, yeah, it's not too heavy on enlargement or public procurement.
And if I may say, since I'm a freak myself of history and international relations, that was my most favorite subject. In every chapter, there are stories from the job, of course, and which I share to give the dynamics. Also, sometimes it is like a novel to ease the reader, no? And also it takes some nice tales from history of international affairs. So you have something about Churchill, foreign policy when he was back to Gambia. You have something on Arab-Israeli conflict resolution working in the UN. There's a lot of history, also tales from history, just because you said, so I fully respect the importance and the beautiful study of history, so I could not resist even to put anecdotes from history of IR in the book, at least those that I found relevant for my narrative. So if you will read it, you will understand what I mean.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Do we have any more questions? No, we're good. Excellent. Thank you for joining us today. But most importantly, thank you for Giulio for coming on a national holiday in Belgium, joining us here today to share his insights and his fantastic book. Highly recommended. Again, if you're considering a career, even in academia, but also a career in international organization policy making world, getting a better understanding of how policy happens in the actual world, with a lot of relevant information. Giulio has been generously shared his extensive experience of the policy world and pulled the curtains and let us in, taken the front seat in this very exciting policy making journey. So thank you so much for joining us today.
And of course, this is your hard copy, which I brought for you, and I'm going to
sign it.
A little thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Giulio. Thank you guys for joining us today on this very beautiful sunny day. Thank you.
I was particularly thankful also to the people who were still coming despite it.